Hi, folks. Welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star. First, peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, today we got a great conversation for you. A lot of things to talk about. Every Wednesday, we have the Horn Report. So we're going to check in with Dr. Gerald Horn to talk about everything from Russia, the latest remarks coming from Russian President Putin. We'll talk about what President Biden said at the United Nations today. And let's talk about this lawsuit filed by the New York Attorney General against President Trump and his 3 children. We'll have that in the Horn Report. Also, we're going to discuss the user fee program for the FDA, talking about how pharmaceutical companies are providing the budget for the Food and Drug Administration. Talk about conflict of interest. We'll talk a little bit about that. And how do you build a millionaire mindset during an inflation? We'll have a discussion to give us some insight on what we can do to be financially ready and so much more. So stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Again, my name is Farajii Muhammad, your host for today, and I'm so excited to be having these important conversations. A lot of things to talk about as it is a big news day, talking about domestic policy, foreign policy, and talking about some things happening with a former president, and so much more. Now, make sure y'all get ready to jump in and be a part of the conversation. Big shout out to my online culture crew on YouTube and Facebook. Y'all know who you are. Hey, be prepared, because we're going to make sure that we get your comments in, because of course, no conversation is complete without who? Without you. So we'll be posting your comments in a few moments as we have these conversations. And of course, continue to show your support for Black Star Network as we're doing the great work of being a Black-owned media that speaks about the issues, that tells your story and pleads your case. So go to blackstarnetwork.com and support us today. All right, folks, it's Wednesday, and it's time for us to check in with our very own analyst and history and policy expert, Dr. Gerald Horn, with the Horn Report. Peace, Dr. Horn. How are you, sir?
Hey, it's all good. What about you?
I'm good. All right, Doc, we got a lot to talk about, so let's jump into it. First and foremost, yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin came out and in a speech started to basically tell Russians that they need to prepare because they're looking to do what they call an annexation and preparing their military. Getting people enrolled into the military there in Russia. But I wanted to kind of get some insight on this. First, let's share with you very quickly, Keenan and Ariel. Let's talk a little bit about what Putin plans are based on this report from USA Today. Putin plans, which starts by calling up reservists who take a look. Russian attacks in Ukraine should make your blood run cold. And this is what President Biden said in his UN address, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But take a look at this piece from USA Today about President Putin, how his plan, which starts by calling up reservists who previously served in the army, was unveiled hours after Russian-controlled regions in eastern and southern Ukraine announced plans to hold votes on becoming permanent parts of Russia. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said 300,000 people, a little more than 1% of the 25 million reserves who fit the description, will be called up for military service. Talk to us a little bit about this right now, Dr. Horn. What does this mean? What is President Putin planning to do, even though he said in his speech that his goals of attacking Ukraine and the reason for Ukraine has not changed? But it seems like he is certainly changing some strategy.
It's very ominous. It's clearly a reaction to the setback that the Russian forces suffered in Kharkiv in Ukraine in the past week or so, where their forces were pushed out of their strategic territory. But I think the implication is clear. With this referendum, the areas from Ukraine seized already will be incorporated into Mother Russia, not unlike Crimea was taken from Ukraine in 2014. And what that means is that if Ukraine or their allies in Western Europe and in the United States then attack those annexed territories, Russia will consider that to be an attack on Russia itself, which could mean the deployment of nuclear weapons. It's quite ominous, it's quite dangerous. And what's even more remarkable is that today is September 21st. And before I came online, I watched a brief video from France 24, France's version of CNN and RT, Russia Today. And already in Belgium and in Greece and other Western European nations, you're seeing the lights being dimmed. They're turning off the lights because they're waging war on their major energy supplier. Speaking of Russia, and Russia has retaliated by curtailing energy exports. I was thinking that the only beneficiary might be the estate of the late Philadelphia crooner, Teddy Pendergrass, because the Europeans might want to adopt his signature tune, turn the lights off, light a candle, because that's basically what they're going to be doing,
right,
sooner rather than later.
Wow. So the thing about this latest move from Russia, and President Zelensky of Ukraine said that this is not a surprise that that Russia is starting to kind of move in a way that it's moving. Do you agree with that? Do you think that Ukraine kind of saw this coming?
It's possible. I think that if they're intelligent, they saw it coming. I think it was a sort of surprise for Moscow because they did not expect this setback in Kharkiv, which really gave a shot of adrenaline to the bloodstream of the Ukrainians. That is to say, recall that Napoleon, the late French dictator, once said that morale as to the physical is 3-to-1. That is to say, even if you're outgunned and outnumbered, if your forces have high morale, they can move mountains. And this victory by the Ukrainian forces in Kharkiv certainly increased their morale. It dampened the morale in Russia. But now Mr. Putin, a chess player, with chess being the major game in Russia with a disproportionate number of grandmasters, if you'll recall, he's just pulled a maneuver that I'm not sure that Mr. Zelensky and his allies will be able to counter.
So how does that, I mean, you talked about the energy piece with the other countries. So, with this maneuver, and especially now, when we're seeing like the rest of the world is kind of being brought in more and more into this, especially with the speech from President Biden. And Keenan, if we have the speech, a little bit of the speech, we can, let me know. But I do want to just put it out there in terms of just some of the big excerpts that came from the speech. One of them is when President Biden said these words, and if Ariel, if we can throw these up on the screen, please. He said, and this was based upon the New York Times coverage of the speech. It says, "You cannot seize a nation's territory by force. The only country standing in the way of that is Russia. So we, each of us in this body, must be clear, firm, and unwavering in our resolve. Ukraine has the same rights that belong to every sovereign nation. We will stand in solidarity with Ukraine. We will stand in solidarity against Russia's aggression, period. That's tough talk there, Dr. Horn.
Tough talk indeed, but some neutral observers might see it as hypocritical. Recall that a few decades ago, that the United States, under President Clinton, basically bombed Serbia into the Stone Age and seized Kosovo and stood it up as an independent nation, although many nations around the world do not recognize it. But from the point of view of our community, I thought one of the more intriguing aspects of Mr. Biden's speech was his proposal to expand the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. This is the top table of the international community. It includes Britain, France, the United States, Russia, and China. Now, obviously, Mr. Biden has in mind trying to wrong foot Russia and wrong foot China, but he said that they were going to propose an African member of the permanent body that fundamentally sets the rules of the road for the world. I doubt if this is going to be South Africa. Mr. Biden just met at the White House with President Cyril Ramaphosa, but I don't think that the United States necessarily trusts the African National Congress because of its close alliance with the South African Communist Party. I think more likely it would be Nigeria because, number one, it has a bigger economy than that of South Africa. Number two, it has the largest population on the African continent. And then, most importantly, from Washington's point of view, I think it'll be easier to manipulate Nigeria, I'm afraid to say, because of the ethnic conflicts between the Hausa, the Yoruba, and the Igbo, which is made to order for manipulation from Washington's point of view. Now, he also said there would be a South American member. Likely that's Brazil, which has the largest Black population outside of Nigeria. So once again, this is good news for Pan-Africanism. But at the same time, I was thinking that with this election coming up in Brazil in a few days, and with the Trump of the tropics, President Bolsonaro of Brazil, threatening to pull off a coup like Mr. Trump pulled off or tried to pull off in January 2021, that this may play into this idea of having Brazil sit at the top table. And then, of course, there'll be another Asian country, which is probably India. The United States is making a large bet on India right now, but I'm not sure how that's going to pay off either.
Let's play a little bit. We got a little bit of just a small excerpt of President Biden speaking at today's UN gathering. Here's President Biden, folks. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, my fellow leaders, in the last year, our world has experienced great upheaval. A growing crisis in food insecurity, record heat, floods, and droughts, COVID-19, inflation, and a brutal, needless war. A war chosen by one man, to be very blunt. Let us speak plainly. A permanent member of the United Nations Security Council invaded its neighbor, attempted to erase the sovereign state from the map. Russia has shamelessly violated the core tenets of the United Nations Charter. No more important than the clear prohibition against countries taking the territory of their neighbor by force. Again, just today, President Putin has made overt nuclear threats against Europe and a reckless disregard for the responsibilities of the non-proliferation regime. Now, Russia's calling up more soldiers to join the fight, and the Kremlin is organizing a sham referenda to try to annex parts of Ukraine, an extremely significant violation of the UN Charter. This world should see these outrageous acts for what they are. Putin claims he had to act because Russia was threatened. But no one threatened Russia. And no one other than Russia sought conflict. In fact, we warned it was coming, and with many of you, we worked to try to avert it. Putin's own words make his true purpose unmistakable. Just before he invaded, Putin asserted, and I quote, "Ukraine was created by Russia and never had, quote, real statehood." And now we see attacks on schools, railway stations, hospitals, one on centers of Ukrainian history and culture. In the past, even more horrifying evidence of Russia's atrocity and war crimes. Mass graves uncovered in Izium, bodies, according to those who excavated those bodies, showing signs of torture. This war is about extinguishing Ukraine's right to exist as a state, plain and simple. Ukraine's right to exist as a people. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whatever you believe, that should make your blood run cold. That's why 141 nations in the General Assembly came together and to unequivocally condemn Russia's war against Ukraine. The United States has marshaled massive levels of security assistance and humanitarian aid and direct economic support for Ukraine. More than $25 billion to date. Our allies and partners around the world have stepped up as well. And today, more than 40 countries represented in here have contributed billions of their own money and equipment to help Ukraine defend itself. The United States is also working closely with our allies and partners to impose costs on Russia, to deter attacks against NATO territory, to hold Russia accountable for the atrocities and war crimes. Because if nations can pursue their imperial ambitions without consequences, then we put at risk everything this very institution stands for.
That was President Joe Biden speaking at the United Nations today. Dr. Horn, his speech tone, everything feels very familiar. It sounds like the first time when he addressed the American people, when he talked about Russia's invasion of Ukraine back in February. Do you feel like there was something new that he put out there today outside of some of the strategic things, but it still sounds like he is still trying to, quote unquote, like justify, some either some military action or some policy action against Russia. Am I wrong in that?
Not at all. I think the only difference is that today he was speaking before the international community, all assembled in one room. Right. This speech will garner headlines across the globe. I take it that Mr. Biden saw it as a way to mobilize popular sentiment against Moscow. There are cynics or perhaps realists who might say, well, this is all well and good coming from Mr. Biden, Emmanuel Macron of France, lamenting the rise of a new imperialism, when, of course, we all know that France historically has been a major imperialist country. The United States overthrew an independent government of Hawaii in the 1890s and then incorporated it as a state by 1959. On the positive side, however, I think that we should give Mr. Biden a cookie because he had no major verbal mishaps during the course of that speech. And that in itself is remarkable for him.
Damn. All right. Well, let's talk about how this is going to impact the conversation around Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan.
Well, apparently negotiations are in motion. You might have seen that article in the New York Times this morning, which talked about there is still a flood of male and female U.S. basketball players arriving in Russia as we speak.
I saw that. Now I saw, Dr. Horn, that more WNBA players are vowing to not play in Russia, whereas men that are either going into the NBA looking to get some additional training and development, or they're already in the NBA, are planning to go to Russia. And I'm like, Did they talk?
Well, I just hope they check their luggage before they arrive.
Come on, Doc. Say it like that.
Because, I hope there's no cannabis oil
Right.
stashed away
Real
in their
talk.
sneakers.
Real talk.
Because if so, that'll be another issue for Mr. Biden to deal with. But I have to say, as I've been saying all along, that I'm relatively optimistic despite these frayed relations between Moscow and Washington. I'm optimistic that Brittany Griner will be released because, number one, she has a powerful lobby behind her in the United States. Number two, she's been able to hire top flight lawyers in Russia, which can't hurt her case. And then number three, as we've said before, the United States has suggested that she be traded for Victor Bout, who is a notorious arms dealer with global contacts who Russia would like to have back in the fold. So you combine all of these factors and it spells good news for Brittany Griner.
Well, we will see how that situation, of course, plays out. All right, Doc, we got a few moments left. Let's talk about your favorite former president, Donald Trump. New York Attorney General Letitia James is one not to be played with, as she has threw the gauntlet down filing a lawsuit against the former president and his three children after an investigation that lasted over 3 years. Take a look at this, folks. She sued him, put it out there. Let's take a few moments and Keenan just give me the go ahead, but because we got a little bit of what Ms. James had to say about this lawsuit. But what do you make of this? This is 3 years of investigations looking into his business dealings. This is just looking at his businesses, right? How he runs his businesses. And she came to the conclusion that not just him, but his children have all got involved in massive, or as she describes it, staggering fraud, business fraud. As one who studied law, as one who is seeing this thing playing out, Dr. Horn, is this the big one?
Well, financially, it's not a criminal case, as you well know. So we
Right.
won't have the satisfaction of seeing Mr. Trump in an orange jumpsuit as a result of this case. But I think that on paper, it could lead to taking a chunk out of his fortune because it's a typical tycoon's ruse. That is to say, when you go to the bank to get a loan, you say your assets are in the billions. But when you try to go to Forbes 400, when your time comes to pay your taxes to the Internal Revenue Service, you lower your assets and say your assets are in the millions. And that's probably a fraud on the bank because there has been some controversy as to whether Mr. Trump is a billionaire in any case. I tend to doubt.
But that's always been debated though, right, Doc? I mean, as far as I've known about Donald Trump, and I'm saying, of course, he's been around for years, but there's always, and I remember watching this Netflix documentary like last year, and they said, and it was like, it's always been debated, even by Forbes, like how much is he really worth? I just did a simple random like search, and I asked my phone, they said, hey, Google, and it was, and they said that he was worth $3 billion. And I was like, what? That's the look that I gave my phone. Like, okay. Even after lawyer fees? Well, he doesn't pay his lawyer, so that doesn't count. But it's like that's always been the question of what is he actually worth? And you would think that a businessman of his caliber, quote unquote, like we see Elon Musk, we see other business, Mark Zuckerberg, we see the guy that owns Amazon. We've seen all these people, right? We have there's always a constant conversation about their net worth. When it comes to Donald Trump, it's a big question mark.
It's a big question mark indeed, but I think that this may be his downfall financially. On the other hand, the trial most likely will be in Albany, New York, and Mr. Trump, if he's able to hire a lawyer, will probably be able to pick a jury that'll be sympathetic to him in Albany, New York, given the demographics of that particular region. And in any case, I think that our audience should pay attention to the fact that three of the major lawyers going after Mr. Trump, speaking of Attorney General Letitia James of New York State, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, Fonnie Willis, the Fulton County, Georgia prosecutor, they're all Black. And that has been an issue for the MAGA crowd, who say that this is some sort of Black conspiracy against the dear leader. Speaking of MAGA, Mr. Trump's lawyers should be careful, because oftentimes they end up in hot water to the point where the latest saying is MAGA means making attorneys get attorneys. Look at the jailing of Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, maybe going down soon, the former mayor of New York City. So these lawyers better walk a very narrow path, because they may be next in the crosshairs.
All right, let me play what Miss James had to say just for a few moments as we wrap up the Horn Report. Let's play Miss New York Attorney General Letitia James as she announces her lawsuit against President Trump and his children.
Good morning. Following a comprehensive 3-year investigation by my office, including witnesses, interviews with more than 65 witnesses, and review of millions of documents that were submitted by Mr. Trump and others, I am announcing that today we are filing a lawsuit against Donald Trump for violating the law as part of his efforts to generate profits for himself, his family, and his company. The complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us. He did this with the help of the other defendants, his children, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump, and former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg and Trump Organization Controller Jeffrey McConney. Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization repeatedly and persistently manipulated the value of assets to induce banks to lend money to the Trump Organization on more favorable terms than would otherwise have been available to the company, to pay lower taxes, to satisfy continuing loan agreements, and to induce insurance companies to provide insurance coverage for higher limits and at lower premiums. This conduct was all in violation of Executive Law, Section 6312, which gives the Attorney General broad and special powers to go after persistent and repeated fraud and illegality. As part of demonstrating illegality under that section of Law 6312, we show that they violated several state criminal laws, including falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, insurance fraud, and engaging in a conspiracy to commit each of these state law violations. We believe the conduct alleged in this action also violates federal criminal law, including issuing false statements to financial institutions and bank fraud. And we are referring those criminal violations that we've uncovered to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the Internal Revenue Service. As a result of these violations, we are asking the court to, among other things, permanently bar Mr. Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, Eric Trump, from serving as an officer or director in any corporation or similar entity registered and or licensed in New York. To bar Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization from entering into any New York State commercial real estate acquisition or from applying for loans from any financial institution in New York for 5 years. To pay for the financial benefits obtained as a result of the persistent fraudulent practices at an estimated $250 million. And towards the end of my remarks, I will go into the other relief that we are seeking.
Damn. Damn. Dr. Horn. Now, we don't have enough time to get into all of it right now, but I wanted everyone to just hear the depth of the investigation and the conclusions and the charges that she made. And I'm wondering, and you tell me how the law works on this point, Doc. If it looks like this is a solid case that he's going, that the state of New York is going to prevail, how does that look? How does that work in other where Trump's organization or his businesses may be in other states, say Florida or in some other place? Will that how does his business get affected if New York it wins this case?
It's hard to say. I mean, certainly in Florida, the man he supported, Governor DeSantis, his attorney general will be unlikely to go after Mr. Trump. In neighboring New Jersey, where he has major interests and where you have a Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, that may be different. Likewise, in Chicago, I'm sure you've seen the major Trump tower that sits in the city of the big shoulders, and you have a Democratic governor there, Mr. Pritzker, whose attorney general might be predisposed to go after Mr. Trump. But with regard to barring him in New York State, well, Mr. Trump can register his corporations in Delaware. She did mention that she's going to be referring these putative criminal charges to the Justice Department, presumably to the Manhattan Attorney General, District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And so Mr. Trump and the children will be in court for some years to come. But Mr. Trump is not reclining in repose as these charges are being filed. He's now brokered a new alliance with QAnon, these ultra right-wing extremists. Look at the rally he just had this past weekend in Ohio. So he's threatening to, like in the Bible, to bring down the temple, not only on himself, but on the rest of us.
Wow. Let me get a couple of comments in very quickly as we wrap up the conversation with you, Dr. Horn. Truth is Power, you said, FYI, Letitia James for president. If she can't get Donald Trash to go to the prison, she's going to break him, take him straight to the bank. Letitia James, my new black hero, black woman rock. Janelle, you checked in. Thank you, Truth is Power. I hear that. Janelle, you checked in and said, we still have to keep our eye on the broader landscape, especially when there's a whole cluster of maggots, ready to pop off if they think Cheeto Jesus is in trouble. Wow. Marco, Janelle, thank you. Marco, banks are culpable too. Facts, they should be made to account, if not already. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you wholeheartedly there, Marco. Cindy, thank you so much, bro, for posting your comment. Cindy, you said, I knew that black women would be the downfall of Trump in the vote and in law. And Rebecca Johnson, that $1 billion deal Jared just got from Saudi Arabia, top secrets and intel was traded for those billions. Woo! Woo! Absolutely. Thank you all for posting your comment. Well, Dr. Horn, all I can say is I can't wait to tune in next week to talk to you about this situation. And for those who think that we shouldn't be talking about the president, I think this is absolutely important. You got to talk about the president, the former president, and you got to talk about Ukraine, because guess what? They affect black people in this country in some way, shape, or form, right? And I think it's very, very important that we just don't get tunnel vision when all of this stuff is interrelated, Doc. I'm a true believer in understanding that politics, foreign policy, domestic policy, all of these things, history, this is all intermingled. We can't run away from the bricks that are falling as America, as we currently know it, is coming apart. We can't all just say, oh, no, I don't want this brick. Let's not talk about this falling brick. Let's talk about this fall. You can't do it. Because it's all going to fall on our head if somebody is not talking about it. If someone is not making you aware, hey, the bricks are falling. So we have to have these conversations. Dr. Gerald Horn, Moore's Professorship of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much again, Doc, for tuning in, for checking in for the Horn Report.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause as we come forward. Let's talk about what's happening with the FDA. I'm going to share with you what one doctor is saying, how she's saying that, look, the FDA is doing some crazy things and how there might be an alternative to dealing with the backdoor dealings of our Food and Drug Administration. We'll have that conversation. Stay with us. That's coming up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. And a big shout out to all of our new watchers today as we have these conversations. Make sure y'all follow us on our social media at Black Star Network. Make sure you follow me on my social media so we can continue the conversations offline at The Real Farajii. You can also follow me on Twitter at Farajii and Facebook at Farajii Muhammad as well. All right, folks, very quickly, we wanted to have a conversation, and I'm sure that this is going to expand into another discussion. But I was so blown away about a recent piece that I read in the New York Times that broke the story about the FDA, folks. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because I feel like we need to know what is going on with our government institutions and agencies. Take a look at this headline here, folks. The FDA's drug industry fees fuel concern over influence. Apparently, the pharmaceutical industry, according to the New York Times, the pharmaceutical industry finances about 75% of the agency's drug division through a controversial program that Congress must reauthorize by the end of this month. Take a look here. This is what was reported. Every 5 years, the officials of the Food and Drug Administration go behind closed doors to negotiate the terms of its core budget, about $3 billion this year. But the FDA is not at the table with members of Congress or with White House officials. Instead, it's in dozens of meetings with representatives of the giant pharmaceutical companies whose products the agency regulates. The negotiations are a piece of the quote unquote user fee program in which drug, device, and biotech companies make payments to the agency partly to seek product approvals. The fees have soared since the program's inception 3 decades ago and now make up nearly half of the FDA's budget, financing 6,500 jobs at the agency. The pharmaceutical industry funding alone has become so dominant that last year it accounted for 3/4 or $1 billion of the agency's drug division budget. Details of the program are being debated in Congress, which faces a deadline of September 30th to approve legislation that would reauthorize the agency's power to collect the fees. The pharmaceutical lobby says its role in funding the agency has helped speed approvals of life-saving drugs to the market by providing it with the resources to do the work. But advocates for patients and doctors say the agreements have enabled the industry to weaken the approval process meant to ensure that drugs are safe and effective. Wow. Can we say wow? I want to bring in my special guest, Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, who is a certified family physician and CEO of Green Harvest Health, to kind of talk to us a little bit about the backdoor dealings and the implications of this user fee program having on our health and wellness, especially in public health. Is this good for public health? And that is one of the big things that I think that we need to ask ourselves. If the pharmaceutical companies are providing all this money to an agency that is supposed to regulate it, then what do you think that regulation is going to really be like? I'll wait. Do you think that if the pharmaceutical companies that are providing jobs and all of these things, they're providing all of this financial growth and incentives for the FDA, do you think that the FDA will have the willpower? Do you think they will have the morality to say, you know what, we don't want your money because we don't want there to be a conflict of interest? So I wanted to bring in Dr. Cole. Let me see if we can get her in and have her to be a part of this. Yep. There she is, Dr. Cole, Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Bridget, when we talk about this, I had to at least bring this out.
Yes.
Because it's so much is happening. But one of the big things that I'm very concerned about in this country is how public health is regulated, right? That unfortunately we're still, even though the president said that the pandemic is over, we're really still in a period where we're told to get boosters, we're told to get drugs. We got monkeypox is now there. We're talking about polio has come back in some states, and there's going to be a heavy reliance on drugs. There's going to be a heavy reliance on pharmaceutical products, right? Mm-hmm. But when you know that pharmaceutical companies are making these deals, then you got to ask yourself the question, they're fast tracking these products, but are these products really effective? Are they really good for us? What do you make of this?
It's I think it's really shocking to read this article, but to be honest, it all makes sense now, right? That at this point, if it's pay to play, if the pharmaceutical companies are basically paying off, in so many words, the FDA to make medications get to the market faster, to get approval, of course that price is going to be sent off to the patient as well. So no wonder patients pay so much for products. And then if you realize that these medications are being pushed, and every day patients are on more and more medications, and we're paying more for medications every day, people distrust the medical system, and that's for good reason. There's a good reason that we distrust what's going on, because the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies are nearly in bed together. And as long as that relationship is as tight as it is, how do we know that we need what they say we need? How do we know that we can trust the medications they claim that we need? And how can the physician even have enough time to be able to investigate this themselves?
So if that's the case, and we see that happening, right? I'm wondering, okay, is there like what's the recourse for us as the citizens? What's the recourse for us as consumers of these pharmaceutical products, right? Like, where's the accountability? I know that it was stating in the article that Bernie Sanders, who has always kind of been a thorn in the side of the pharmaceutical companies for years, he said, if you're paying, then where's the regulation?
Absolutely. The fact of the matter is we need to have better conversations with our government because they should be working for families and they should be working for patients and not working for the pharmaceutical companies. But as patients, what I've really seen is that 40% of adult Americans are looking at complementary and alternative medications. They are no longer trusting the system that's been set in place in the healthcare system, and they're leaving it in droves to go to more holistic options. We need to pay attention to this. We need to make sure those options are safe. And we need to talk to our government and say that this pay to play, this user fee is actually doing a detriment to our health as well as our trust of the system.
So you released a book, Dr. Bridget, on it's called Courage in Cannabis, right? Where you're really an advocate for the use of cannabis. How do you see that industry playing out on this current or impacting this current pharmaceutical industry? Are you finding, particularly among Black folks, are you finding that Black folks are saying, you know what, I'm giving up these pills, I'm gonna go to that leaf?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that we as Black Americans have never had a great trust in the health system. I've seen it every day. And keep in mind, we have a history. We have the Tuskegee experiment. We have a history of not trusting our health system. And we do trust more our holistic options that our grandmother and great grandmothers have been helping us with for years and hundreds of years. So what I see are patients every day that either don't take the medications that their physicians are prescribing. 50% of medications are never taken by the patients that they were prescribed to. And they're looking at cannabis, which is simply a plant, as an option to treat their medical needs.
And what has been, there has been, of course, there's been a lot of conversation about Black folks, setting up dispensaries and being a part of the industry on that side. But in terms of looking at cannabis for medicinal purposes, right? What has been some of the numbers and some of the data that you've seen where folks are saying essentially, like, for sickle cell and for other conditions, you know what, this is a better treatment option. This is a safer way versus getting a fast track, a pill on the market.
Absolutely. I mean, so September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month. So we need to keep in mind what our friends and relatives are dealing with. And to be quite honest, there was a study done not that long ago that looked at the majority, a great majority of sickle cell patients have experimented with some extent of cannabis for treatment. The fact of the matter is the studies behind opioids are not as great as people think, but that is what we're pushed to. And we're also pushed to addiction. And so what we're finding as a people is that we don't want to go this route anymore. We don't want the addiction. We don't want pills pushed on us. We want something that we understand, that we can control, that we can hopefully in some states grow ourselves, and that can help not only the pain the sickle cell patients experience, but it helps with the anxiety. It helps with the stress that leads to the crisis that sickle cell patients endure. We want to be able to control and feel empowered in our own healthcare. And when you have a system where the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies are in bed together, it's hard to trust the system at hand.
Wow. Let me just take a couple of comments from my online culture crew, Doc, because I think this is an interesting conversation. But one of the big things, after learning about what the FDA's user program is doing, it does not build any trust. I mean, this does not build any trust. And here's the thing. You have millions of people, especially Black people. We were all kind of got into a space of the tactic of fear was the number one driver to get many of our people vaccinated for COVID and boosted in all of those things, right? So part of me is wondering, like, okay, now that we know that there's a pay-to-play program with the FDA, does this stuff really work?
Right.
Is it really in our best interest? Because if you got an agency, and I can't emphasize this enough, Doc, if there's an agency that's supposed to look out for our public health and well-being, and they're playing and they're not regulating, they're not setting any boundaries, they're not even proposing any sort of consequences or punishment against those who are responsible. And that's the crazy part about it. We got some of our people are still trying to recover from the side effects of some of these medicines that are being put out for pharmaceutical companies. And we're finding out that the agency that is supposed to protect us is sleeping in the same bed as these companies. It feels like a huge, huge betrayal, to say the least.
It does.
Huge betrayal.
And I will say, I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I'm not anti-vaccination. I believe that we have incredible scientific progress as far as what we're able to produce to keep humans alive and to keep us safe. But when you learn that the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies can push things ahead faster, that they can push things ahead with less trials, it does make you question what you're actually getting. So I do not suggest that you do not take your vaccines or take your medications, but I do suggest that you find physicians that you can trust, that you can ask critical questions to, and physicians that are willing to do the work, to do their own investigation and be an advocate. Be an advocate for your patient. Then we can create systems that patients can trust.
And I would agree with that recommendation. And I think that, if you're taking medicine, the only concern that you should be having is whether the medicine will help you to relieve you of your condition, of your pain. There shouldn't be a moral dilemma attached to just taking medicine when you're just simply trying to get well. You know what I mean? Now you got to think about, man, is this really going to work? Is this going to be good? How much money is getting, and I've said this before on Roland Martin's show, that, while we get sicker, someone else gets richer. And it's very, very unfortunate. That is the state of our healthcare and public health service here in this country. Let's go to our culture crew that has been posting their thoughts on this. Lana, always checking in, loyal watcher and supporter. She says, I only have a holistic doctor and I only take grandma remedies. Both of mine lived until 90 plus. Mine did too, Lana. And I'll take the holistic playbook any day. Facts. My grandmother lived until she was, God bless her, she was a little bit over, she about 91 until she transitioned. So I totally understand. Taylor, thank you for checking in. You said, we know the many doctors receive their current updated info on pharmaceuticals from the reps that show up with these donuts and free game tickets. Wow. Does that still happen, Doc?
Not like it used to. I hear that every day. People think I get a kickback from pharmaceuticals, or that I'm getting game tickets and all of these extras. A lot of that really pulled back probably 2 decades ago. A lot of
I was going to say it. I was like, that's still happening?
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that perception still exists. I've never gotten a kickback. I don't know who is getting the kickback, but it sounds like the FDA is. So the fact of the matter is that the doctors are, I would suspect that doctors are probably just as upset about this article as the patients are. And I think we all have some work that we need to do with our advocacy groups and with our government to make sure that we're safe and that we're making good choices. The one thing I highly recommend, though, is it's not about dropping all of your pharmaceuticals, but it is learning how you can live better, even adding and doing more holistic options, right? And so when you need your pharmaceuticals, you need them. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of things that go into our diet and a lot of things that we can actually plant-based, food-based, vitamin-based, that we can add into our experiences, which is why our grandmothers and great-grandmothers did so well. Yeah. And so we need to cut out some of the horrific sugars that are in our diet and that really slow us down. I mean, there's a lot of things that are pushed more than even the pharmaceuticals that are a problem and why really Black and brown communities do not do well. And it's the options of what's ahead of us. And that should be something that we should focus on as well.
Hey Doc, let me ask you this. You know, coming out of COVID, or you know, kind of seeing on the tail end of COVID, do you think that people will get the message? And I'm speaking of Black, brown, white, Asian, Latino. Do you think that people will really get the message that it still comes back down to personal responsibility and personal health, taking the extra time, you know, spending a few extra dollars on getting the best of foods? Do you think that people want to get that lesson? Because that's one of the things that I'm gleaning from this whole pandemic experience, that if nothing else, you have to take the necessary steps to make sure that your health is in better shape, right? You know what I mean? Like if we come out of COVID after it was nearly, 2.5 years and we're still eating the same way, we're still, not taking care of ourselves, our hygiene, not being taking the protective measures that we need to take. I feel like something is going to be lost in that. That was a big wasted experience. What's your take on that?
So I definitely think that we need to take more responsibility, that our health should not be dependent on any one pill ever. Okay. And so whether it's, taking those walks after dinner, eating healthier meals, decreasing some of the fatty meats that are in our diet, we need to take responsibility. I'm a family physician. I spent almost 20 years at the Cleveland Clinic. I'm a cannabinoid specialist. And I recommend not just, cannabis as far as marijuana, but all other aspects of the cannabis plant to help normalize and balance your system and improve your immune system. And I work with an herbalist. I don't claim to know it all. But when I have patients coming in, I send them over to the herbalist. Let's have a better conversation about how you can make this your lifestyle and not just a treatment option. Yeah. And that's how we can do better as a people.
As we wrap up this conversation very quickly, since you do work and you are familiar with the cannabis industry, talk to us about how do we have a conversation about regulating that industry? I'm here in Los Angeles, and one of the big things that's an issue is illegal cannabis dispensaries. The state has not licensed a lot of these places, so you go in and it's like very backdoor, shady type of places that are selling cannabis. They don't have the THC levels, and all of those things are happening. So is there a way that regulation can happen and a way to prevent something like this that we see with the FDA now happening to the cannabis industry in the next 10 years?
100%. What is really important is quality, accurate testing of products, and it has to be required. If you are taking products and you don't know what those test results are, the certificate of analysis, then you might as well be getting brickweed from your neighbor next door. You need to know what's in that product so that you know how to use it and that you know that it's safe. We also have to have more social equity and more options to get into the industry so that it's not, backdoor dispensaries, but people that are getting into it the correct way so that they can provide products that are safe for the patients that they're serving. So we need to have more opportunities. I work with a group now that our whole purpose is to be able to help Black and brown people get into this industry the way that so that they can benefit from the cannabis industry that once we were going to prison for. And so working with Nomad, I end up helping people find a place where they can hopefully find whether it's the product that they're creating or the dispensary or cultivation center that they're opening so that we can be a part of the story.
Absolutely. And my final question, Doc, is that for doctors, practitioners like yourself and others, are we going to have or see a choir of Black doctors emerging to speak out against some of these public health inequities, and maybe looking at a number of Black doctors to speak on cannabis regulation? Because it just seems like as we have these conversations about our public health, we're not seeing as many, and I could be completely wrong, so please correct me if I am, but I'm just not seeing those coalition of Black doctors, those organizations really sounding the alarm and say, hey, Black folks, brown folks, yo, let us do here. We are here. We're going to be the buffer for all of this other stuff that is coming down the pipe. We're going to help you to kind of break it down. On Roland's show, he had a number of Black doctors, but it's still, for me, even listening to Black physicians, I was like, but where's the larger group? Where's that? Are there some voices that we need to kind of turn to, so that way, as we're looking at these public health crises, we can go to these trusted sources?
Absolutely. So there are definitely some organizations out there, but I don't know if we have enough of a platform or a voice to get that information out there. The one thing that I highly recommend to physicians, Black, brown, and in between, all of the above, read. Do not wait for some organization to give you the permission to say cannabis is okay, because many of our physicians are still stuck in reefer madness. They have not looked at the research. They do not see the benefits of this, and they're more concerned about the stereotypes and the stigma and not the actual benefits. Keep in mind, this whole FDA thing, and we're speeding medications to approval faster, those are the same critique that they're having of the holistic and cannabis space, that the studies aren't large enough, that the numbers aren't more significant enough. That's what they're criticizing the cannabis for. And now we're taking pharmaceuticals that we're overpaying for, and they're doing the exact same thing. So I highly recommend physicians take control and be the advocate that you should be, and read and learn that cannabis is an incredible option for your patients.
There it is. Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, we truly, truly appreciate you. I thank you so much for your time. Your book is called Courage in Cannabis, and this is a powerful, powerful book. There's the cover right there, folks, as we've been talking to Dr. Bridget about this user fee program by the FDA, as well as some of the dynamics of the cannabis industry. Doc, we certainly would love to bring you back on to have other conversations about this, but thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about how do you build a millionaire's mindset during inflation. We'll have that conversation. Plus, I got something crazy to share with y'all the next hour about a story that about this one guy that just keep on giving. I'm going to share it with you. I don't even want to say it right now because I want us to be focused on building that millionaire mindset. But trust and believe, this guy is doing way too much. He's just doing the most. So stay with me. Those conversations are coming up next right here on The Culture, only on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
folks, welcome back to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Make sure that you continue to show your support for us here at Black Star Network. You can go to our website right now, download the apps. We got a lot of new viewers, and I'm certainly grateful for you for tuning in. But check us out on our website at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. Support Black Star Network if you've been enjoying the conversations and you like the feedback and you enjoy the engagement. This is where we have those discussions, cultural-based discussions about politics, education, and a whole lot of other topics. But again, this is where you'll find unadulterated, unfiltered conversation about Black life and culture here on Black Star Network. So your support, financial support, sharing the content type of support is especially needed. Again, blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, I wanted to kick off the second hour talking about building a millionaire's mindset. We all know that inflation is kicking our butts right now. Now, some of us might be getting used to it. Others are still struggling, but the fact remains that we need to figure out a way to make sure that our dollars really work for us and not us breaking our backs and killing ourselves trying to get our dollars. And that's why we're so very happy to have our next guest and to have this next conversation about what does it take to build a millionaire's mindset? What does that take? And so we want to welcome Miss Alicia Holmes, who is a wealth coach, to give us some insight about this, especially in light of the impact that inflation has on Black and brown communities. Alicia, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. How are you today?
I'm great.
Great. All right, Alicia, I want to throw something out there as we have this conversation, just to give people some context, because inflation is very, very real. And this is what I came across, Alicia, and you can give me your insight and your expertise. This came from CNN. Take a look at this, folks. Ariel, if we could post this quote. It says that with prices rising to the highest rates the U.S. has seen in more than 40 years, researchers say Black families will suffer the worst effects of rising inflation because they lag behind their white counterparts in income, wealth, financial savings, and home ownership. The disparity leaves many Black Americans without the funds to help offset the rising consumer prices and puts greater pressure on their monthly income, economists say. Some economists fear that if lawmakers don't act soon to combat inflation, Black families may be forced to go without necessities as the threat of another recession looms. Wow. Take a look. As inflation soars, Black Americans bear the brunt of rising grocery, gas, and housing prices. These are the three major areas. You're talking about rent, you're talking about gas, you're talking about food. And so now, Alicia, I'm hearing folks, and I'm sure you're hearing folks, it's like we're just working to pay bills, working to put gas in our car, right? And working to pay the rent, right? Now, if you decide to go on a trip, if you decide to have, to go out on a date, especially if you're single, even if you're married or with someone in a relationship, you're like, I don't know if we can do that as often as we used to. So where's the relief? How did we break out of this? Because this seems like we haven't been given the go ahead. The president never said, hey, everybody, along with the pandemic being over, so is inflation. No, that hasn't happened. Matter of fact, the Fed just raised the interest by 0.75% today in an attempt to try to control the rising prices. Mm-hmm. Alicia, we need your help, sis.
All right. So what I'm going to talk about is a complete and total paradigm shift.
Okay.
Even in these very challenging times and at any time, shifting the paradigm and seeing where we have some power and where we can be empowered. Because this whole concept of struggle, it ain't real. We can be thriving. It's just that we don't have the right information to thrive. Even at times like this, there's so many options. There's so many opportunities out there. And there's so many things that we need to know, like right now. So in this recession, and we're in a recession. The last time we were in a major recession, that 2008 period that lasted like 18 months, it affected us disproportionately. We lost our homes at twice the rate of white Americans. And I talk about some answers, what we could be doing right now so that we don't find ourselves in those same positions, particularly if this goes on for almost 2 years.
All right, let's jump right into it. Take us to school, because I'm trying to learn how to keep my money in my pocket and start building. You know what I mean?
All right. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. So when I was just 19 years old, I had someone take me under their wing. I was a college student at an alumni event, and they asked me, it's a party. They said, do you want to be rich or do you want to be wealthy? Because we were talking about being rich. And I said, what's the difference?
Wait a minute, Alicia. They asked you that at a party
at 19? Party, an alumni.
At 19 years old.
At 19 years old, absolutely.
Hey, girl, what's going on? So let me ask you this. You want to be rich? Like,
okay, a little backdrop. I was a business student. Okay, I was a business student. I was at NYU Stern, and it was an alumni event. And, we young, we talking about being rich. And the person had a little more skill. And they're like, okay, do you want to be rich or do you want to be wealthy? And I'm like, what's the difference? And so they said to me, rich, you'll have money. But if you're wealthy, you'll have your time. And
wait a minute, hold on, sis. Don't be dropping no jewels like that and just going by and just keep say that one more time for the people in the chat. Okay. If you want to be rich.
Okay. No, he said if you're rich, you'll have money. If you're wealthy, you have time.
All right, hold on, sis. I know you got a lot of wisdom to share. Here's why I think this is important. Because that forces you to ask the question, what's most important? Mm-hmm. Is it the money or is it your time? And can I answer that? And I'm a student in class, so I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm gonna raise my hand. Professor Holmes, I want to answer that.
Okay.
I want my time.
There we go. We know we can't make more time. So
I can get the money back, but I can't get my time back. I want my time.
Absolutely. So I didn't know what that meant. I'm 19 years. I don't know what that meant, but we can be 40, not know what that means. And so what I was introduced to, what it looks like to be financially free and not have to exchange your time for income, how to have financial well-being, financial freedom, lots of options and choices, not struggle, but thrive and create a generational paradigm shift. And so I was all in, like, how do I become financially free, financially empowered, and not have to exchange my time for income? And then I was given a roadmap, and I followed it. And let me say, I always knew I wanted to be in a life of service, even though I was in business school. So I started working for a small Black nonprofit right out of college, making like a third or maybe less than most of what my friends who had gone on to top corporate jobs and everything. But I had the right information. And by the time I was in my early 30s, doing a 7-figure portfolio, early 40s, completely financially independent. And I just want to say that I learned and I teach, it's not about what you have, it's about what you do with what you have. And that has a lot to do with mindset and having the right information. One of the major things I learned that you can't hit a target you can't define, and you accomplish what you measure. And I was introduced to net worth and being in the net worth game. And, we hear it now, your assets minus your liabilities is your net worth. But the very act of when you actually embrace this and you start to measure this and understand it, and don't pay attention to your income, pay attention to what is happening with my net worth over time. Because we all know our income can go up and up, but that doesn't mean we're building wealth and having a higher net worth. And it was a whole shift, not about struggling about empowerment. What can you do? Living below your means, directing your assets towards, directing your income towards purchasing assets. Because if you're not, you're actually directing your income towards assets that are making other people wealthy. So I got into the net worth, the accumulating assets game with very little money, going to auctions, 2 years out of college, buying property, and just being like very intentional about building my net worth, keeping my expenses low, not going into debt, all of it, a roadmap.
So, Alicia, I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you, the thought came to my mind is that why aren't we having that conversation about would you want to be rich or whether you want to be wealthy? Why isn't someone posing that question to young Black folks today? And I mean, at a much younger age than 19, right? Like my son, he's 9 years old. He always like, Dad, I'm gonna be rich. Dad, I'm gonna be rich. And I'm like, cool, but trying to get him, and we have these constant conversations about money, right? Mm-hmm. And I, as one who I have ups and downs with money, right? But then after a minute, started to look at a couple of things. My mindset started to look at the household, or rather the culture and the community that I grew up in and their perception of money, right? Mm-hmm. Where it was always like this elusive thing. It was always this thing that money is the root of all evil. Those type of things that you're like indoctrinated with when you're a child, right? And as a young person. Mm-hmm. And so I had to switch all of that. Mm-hmm. I had to switch all of that. So now I'm teaching my son, mm-hmm. like, money is a means to an end. It's not the Satan of the world. You know what I mean? But I'm wondering, like, why aren't we having these conversations? Why don't we touch the difference between being rich, being wealthy? You can pose that to a child.
Absolutely.
At 9 and 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And then that will kickstart something within them that mm-hmm. puts them on a trajectory mm-hmm. where they're thinking differently about money. Just from a simple question. And that's how powerful questions are. When you ask thought-provoking questions, it will create a whole different experience. But why are we not having that in schools?
Because, it is not a part of schools. Most people learn this from their families, like literally. And because of everything that has happened to, we know our whole history and how we've been kept out of the economic game and redlining, all of it, not being able, because of our history, this information has not been passed down to us. And I love what you're saying about young people. There's a woman who did my first program when I started out in 2016. It was a 3-month program. And she literally almost had like a breakdown. She had 3 kids, a lovely husband. She's like, I don't want this. And she really, her 10-year-old son, she's like, we taking these coats back. They had some expensive coats. I want you to understand what purchasing a real asset means. And I remember she had him all in the net worth conversation, and him and some friends were playing. He was about 10 at the time. I think they were out playing basketball or something. And they were talking about somebody being rich. And he's like, but what's their net worth? What's their net worth? Are they really, they may be rich, but they're not wealthy. And kids, I can tell you so often when I've had certain kind of conversations with kids, how much they get it. I was on my way to do a presentation around eliminating debt. And I had my cousin's son in the car and my daughter, and they were maybe about 9 and 10 also. And I was going over my presentation and I showed them compound interest and how debt, I say, is financial cancer and how it grows over time and the numbers and the sheets. And these kids were like, well, why would anybody do this? Because no one is looking at those numbers and no one knows what that means. But if you work with me, people change their behavior around nothing else around debt and compound interest and what that looks like. But young people, yes, they could absorb it, but we don't have the information. And I know because I work during COVID alone with maybe over 1,000 people, but over my lifetime, since I was in my early 20s, with thousands of people. And I have to say, unless very often someone from the outside comes and shifts the paradigm for us, it's not shifted.
Mm. Mm-hmm. So somebody has to, it has to spark something different, a new thought around money.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. So what do we see here today based upon the data I shared at the beginning of this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
And I read another data that said that 40% of Black Americans and their families are really suffering right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because as we're reading that, I'm still seeing a musical culture, and I'm talking about Black culture here now. I'm still seeing like within, even in our entertainment culture, you know, whether you're talking about movies and artists and all of that, like there's still this ongoing talk about money, right? But it's a very like materialistic in its context, right? Where it's like, get the cars, get the clothes, you know, buy the expensive belt, one belt. Get the one expensive belt. You know, it's still very materialistic. And I'm like, something is not connecting for us and our people in the sense that we're still looking at money as a way to get more things and not making it work for us instead of us working for it.
You know, if someone didn't take me under their wing, I was always kind of good at savings, but if someone didn't take me under their wing and just introduce me to a completely new paradigm, maybe I would have been doing that to a certain extent over also. It's like we just don't know what we don't know. We're not in a wealth conversation and we have to disrupt that. And, you know, and that's like my mission. You know, I'm financially independent. I get to do what I want to do. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm all about disrupting the wealth gap. I call the net worth the new poverty. We're so focused on acquiring things. So I want to step back for a second. One of the things that my coach has said to me, and I'm going to call him my coach, I'm 19 years old, is that very often in our communities, we're status starved. I had never heard that term before. And I'm like, what is that? So we spend a lot of money on things that beef up our status. I think we're disproportionately marketed towards, specifically Black women. I mean, I do a lot of research, a lot of statistics, and as Black women, we just proportionately spend a lot of money on beauty products and those kinds of things. And, you know, there's a mechanism of influence in marketing that it really just going after us. There's so much I could say about that.
Yeah.
But, so the being status starved because of so many things, our history, microaggressions, all of the, you know, media and everything that's being proposed for us. So, you know, we tend to be large consumers. You either two things, you're a major consumer or you're a major investor. And just know if you are a consumer, then all you're doing is building someone else's wealth.
Dang.
And so,
dang.
Yeah. So
dang. I must just say this like that, Alicia. Damn. We're gonna put you in two categories. I can't stop laughing. Major consumer or major investor. Damn. And if you're a major consumer, you working for somebody else.
Absolutely.
You building somebody else's dream.
You building I love that. You are building someone else's dream. I'm gonna use that.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
And when you were talking about that piece of being status starved, is that still the place that we're in even during inflation?
Oh, it's worse. It's so much worse for us. And, you know, in my grandmother's generation, and even earlier, my mother, I remember when dating myself that credit cards first came out. So our grandmothers and, you know, early in life, our mothers, they literally they could only spend but so much. But credit cards gave us the ability to spend way beyond our means. And in this country, there's some statistics around people spending today the income that they're going to earn for the next 10 years. And that's what this whole world of credit cards and debt is creating for people. So you could just, it's almost like anything you want, whether you can afford it or not, whether it's going to cost you 10 years of labor, you are going to buy it today. And we don't know the numbers behind that and how to think about it and work through those things.
Damn. Alicia, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want to continue this conversation and also include some of the comments that we got from our online culture crew. And big shout out to all of you. Janae, I saw your comment first about today being Black Women Equal Pay Day. So I got to talk to Alicia about what that means and how do we, take this conversation of equity to the next level, especially for the sisters. So big shout out to you, Janae, and to all who said that to me in the chat. That's why I appreciate y'all so much. So we're going to have that conversation and a whole lot more in the final few minutes of today's show. So stay with us. A lot to get to right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been having a dynamic and very enlightening conversation with wealth building coach Alicia Holmes, talking to us about how do you build a millionaire's mindset during an inflation. And Alicia has been on point, dropping jewels on what we need to think about, on how we need to think in terms of building wealth, having money in our pockets, making sure that we have the money to do what we want to do. And I'm talking about not buying things, folks, but investing in things and making sure that we set up a future for ourselves and for our family. So it's been an awesome conversation thus far. And I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. And in a moment, I want to share with Alicia just some of the comments that you've been posting on our YouTube and Facebook pages, so you can be a part of the discussion as well. Alicia, again, thank you so much for your time with us today. But when we're talking about, you gave us so much food for thought in terms of understanding that, being a major consumer versus being a major investor. But, when we're looking at breaking, and you started off your remarks saying that you wanted to shift the paradigm, but when we're talking about that ongoing conditioned or, financial conditioning, and that's how I'm gonna phrase it, that we have been exposed to since we were children, right? That is continued to be reinforced because of culture, running after money. I got to get this money. Just these little things that we tell ourselves, right? But it's showing us that money is this ongoing, like I mentioned, elusive thing, instead of something that we can tap into, that's close by, that's right there, that's either within us versus something that's outside of us. That's a huge paradigm shift, Alicia.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's huge. I'm telling you, that's huge. To see money and to see that wealth comes from within. That, because I'm very clear. I'm very clear, and I could be super wrong, so I don't mind being corrected. But in today's modern times of 2022 in America, one job is not going to be your end all be all. That's not the pathway to financial freedom. And one of our culture crew members online said, financial freedom, baby, that ain't it. Working with that one situation without really understanding the complexities and the opportunities that each one of us can tap into, versus just kind of staying in this very closed space and like, no, I'm gonna just work this one job, and that ain't it.
So no. So first I will say, wherever you are, if you're in a job, maximize it. Look at how you're spending and that kind of thing. But I want to say that there has been no other time in history. We're in the beginning of the 5th industrial revolution. And I believe there's been no other time in history for us to be builders and creators and build our own. A lot of the barriers that existed before in this new economy are not there. So
wait a minute, you're essentially saying that that there is a greater chance of us getting the financial freedom now than it was, say, 30 years ago?
I'm saying there's a better chance for us to build our own corporations, our own organizations, our own cooperative economics. I'm a big proponent of looking at industrial revolutions, where we have something called Web3 right now. And where the infrastructure is there, there's so many opportunities and options. Like right now, if you understood this whole world that we're in the 5th industrial revolution, and you see that people are building the future of currency, the future of work. And let's say you are a coder and you understand the blockchain, you could build platforms now that will change, where you're creating the future of currency and how we will work. This is this is a bigger conversation, but this is not, we can work for people, but now is a time for us to think about how we can own our own and build and understand what we need to understand now, and see what's happening in the 5th industrial revolution that has far less barriers to entry, and where we can really start thinking about building.
You know what? It's so interesting, sis. So now you got my brain running now, because it's so interesting, Alicia. Because even here on this show, we often talk about the dynamics of the future of work, right? And we're seeing that. Of course, COVID really jump-started a lot of this because of work from home. But then I think the biggest thing that came out of that, the work experience, has been people are asking themselves the question, well, what's my worth? What's my value? I'm working for this company. They don't seem to be taking me seriously. They're not investing in me. So therefore, I'm going to take my talent. I'm being LeBron right now. I'm going to take my talents elsewhere, right? So we're looking at that. But then when you really stop and think about it, to your point about understanding the landscape, for so many of us, and I'm sure this has been the same case for you, we've always been told that if you work for somebody, that's going to be your financial future. That's the pathway. But we are living in an idea economy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Like your ideas. We're living in an idea economy. So we praise the likes of like Mark Zuckerberg. We praise Jeff Bezos for coming up with these ideas. But look at these ideas. You know what I'm saying? They're like huge ideas. But it showed, and I think for Black folks in particular, and this is why this is kind of frustrating for Black folks in particular, especially older Black folks. No shade on my elders, but you got to make space for the next generation. You got to give them the confidence to go out to try some different things. Like, don't be so quick to say, no, that's never going to work. Why don't you get yourself a job? When they have a great idea.
This is the idea time. This is a time to dream big, think big. How can we solve problems for our community, not depending on other folks to solve them for us, because that's just not going to happen. Like, I have my whole history and understanding of the world of market and economies over hundreds of years. And we have to take control and ownership of our own markets and economies and build it. And I'm saying that this is one of the best times, I believe, in history to do it in this fifth industrial revolution. But we have to understand first, we're in one. What are the tools and how we can use them to our benefit? And so I am my secret sauce, even since 30 years ago, is I've always loved innovation and started investing in it earlier. And just watching the trajectory and being just continuing to invest in innovation and innovative companies, mostly that are in tech. But now this Web3 environment, this fifth industrial revolution, we get to build our own. And yes.
We get to build our own. Oh man, that's a good thought. Let me bring in some of my culture crew comments in on this. As we've been talking to Alicia Holmes, who is a wealth building coach, folks. Y'all hear what the sisters dropping jewels. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you checked in. You said rich equal working hard for the money. Wealthy equals the money is working for you. That's the difference. Real Brooklyn, that is the thing. And it's interesting. And Alicia, I've been, I have a book on audiobook that talks about meritocracy. And my watchers know I'm always kind of pushing back on this whole idea of meritocracy, that is always about what you can accomplish, achievements and all of that, right? Because that's a part of the capitalistic place that we're in, right? Like the more stuff you got on your resume, the more quote unquote money you will earn, the more value you're seeing based upon the merits. But in this book that talks about meritocracy, it said that now, back in the years ago, the rich never worked. The aristocracy, those who were rich, they never worked. Workers were for the poor, low income, those on the bottom rung of the ladder. But they're saying that in the book, it said that that's changed. Now you have very, very wealthy people that are working so much. I remember hearing Elon Musk making a point. He said he works 80 hours a week. Like he said he has no life. Yeah, I mean, yes, he's one of the richest people in the world, but at the expense of the very thing that we say that we wanted to have, which is time. And I'm like, it's a huge shift in the culture where you have this working, wealthy class of people. And I'm like, damn, is this what we need to, this is what we aspiring to? Because I don't want to, if I'm making millions of dollars, I'm not trying to spend 80, 90 hours doing a job when I got a wife and family.
So let me just tell you, because he got his wife and family, let me just tell you what's happening. These are exciting times. And you can just build. You said ideas. Any idea you come up with, you have cars flying, they're already flying.
Right.
It's such an exciting time. So the idea is to have freedom with your time. But once you have freedom, you get to spend it on the things you love, the things that matter to you and things that are important. Because I find myself spending a whole lot of time because there's so many juicy things to do. And I own my time. And so it's a way of thinking about right now, what's your dreams? Where do you want to be a contribution in the world, to your community, to your family, and to get excited about building in all of those areas. So having financial freedom means you are free to do with your time what you wish. And you see that these people are spending their time building a world that's going to last, like, who knows, century. They're in the beginning of building this world, and it's exciting. And I think that we have to. I'm afraid if we don't get into this game and start building the world, because then we'll be in the world that other people built for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go to Belinda. Belinda, you checked in. Always good to hear from you, Belinda. You said belts, bags, shoes, clothes, trips have no growth value, not unless you can write these necessities off as tangible business needs. Everyone working is building someone else's dream. Yeah. Would you agree with that, Alicia?
Completely. And I love that when you said it, you're building someone else's dream. So if you look at the net worth, we have all kinds of statistics, but one that in Boston, all of the research that is doing research on net worth based upon race, ethnicity, and gender, we're in a state of an emergency in this country. The wealth gap in this country is in a state of emergency. So there was a 2013 study that said that the median net worth for white women was around $41,600. For Black and Latinx women, in the age bracket where almost every other group had their highest wealth, for Black and Latinx women, it was $5. That's when we started wealth and net worth.
I thought she was going to say it's at least 5,000. You saying $5?
$5. And if we start measuring net worth, okay, let me give you one other statistic. So the Federal Reserve of Boston said, okay, we're going to do a wealth study. And theirs is broken down: Black, Caribbean, Puerto Rican, Dominican, white family. So they did a huge study in Boston, and the number is somewhere around, for white families, the average net worth, because that's how you measure wealth. You could have a high income and be poor. Let's talk about wealth, the net worth. It was somewhere around $247,000 for white families. For Black families, they did a combination. I want you to guess what the net worth for Black families was in that study.
That's going to be a hard one because I've seen so many different numbers. All right. What about 10,000?
$8. People thought it was a typo. So because I'm in the net worth game, and because I work with people, I work with professionals, all kinds of, mostly women, Black and Latinx women.
Yeah.
High income earners. Net worth, we're not in the net worth game. We're not purchasing assets. We're not there's so many things I could say. We don't have the roadmap. Something as simply as, and I could say in 2020, when I had a captive audience and I would do these investing master classes, and I had like 120 women showing up for each class, 80, 90. And I looked at their retirement portfolios. Most were in low performing, guaranteed accounts, getting 2-3%, people in CDs. And these are professionals, many professional women. And the simple act of understanding what an index fund is and shifting to an index fund had people 7x their portfolios. I had two young women who had been savings, investing, had a financial professional working with them in all these low performing assets. On top of it were high fees and just underperforming the market. I teach all of this stuff and cleaned that up and doubled their, like in 2 years. And one of them's over 7 figures now, and the other one is close to it. But young professional women, super smart. And so I say all that to say is we don't have the right information. So 90% of the women were in poor performing accounts in their retirement account. 90%. And something as simple as understanding what an index fund is and why that's a good choice. And when I show you the numbers of compounding, leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. So there's a multitude of things. I call it specialized knowledge. A friend of mine gave me the term. We don't have the specialized knowledge of what it looks like to win in the game of wealth.
So this puts us in a couple of things. One is, one of our watchers, Danielle Caldwell, checked in and says, what's the name of that study about net worth? Can you give us any references?
So if you look up Federal Reserve of Boston,
okay,
there's that study. There's a study called The Road to Zero Wealth. I forgot the name of the organization. The Road to Zero Wealth. The study for women, the Institute. If any of my people are on this call, please drop that study in the chat. But all you have to do is Google wealth. So wealth, we focus very often, we Google poverty and all those kinds of things. No, let's Google wealth.
Yeah.
Wealth gap for Black and Latino families, and all the research is out there. And the thing is, so all of these studies we're not building wealth. Black Americans alone spend over $1 trillion.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Alicia, because some people say buying power.
So that
can we dead that term? Because I'm like, yo, that's like you just said, being a major consumer, a major investor, like that's the sign that we're a major consumer. Is that, before I even recommend that we did the term, can we really say it's power?
We're not using it powerfully, that's for sure. But we can turn it into buying power. And that is no joke, like really and truly, because the money is coming in. Where is it going? It's going to building everyone's wealth. We don't even understand the system when we put it in the bank and we're in these low performing CDs, and then they, turn it into millions of dollars for themselves. And then we go and we buy something on credit and pay back absorbent interest and have that compounding. And so the people that we purchased the item from built their wealth. The bank, we put it on a credit card, we're building everybody. So we're building everyone else's wealth and multiple times. And so one of the things my coach taught me was to be masterful at managing how resources flow in and out of your life. And so if you don't have that handle, nothing else matters. I don't care how great of an investor, how much money you make. If you are not masterful at managing how resources flow in and out of your life. And so point. That you are, I teach true budgeting, and that's not tracking, that's being intentional. So when resources flow in your life, if you aren't intentional about where they're flowing out, and if they're not flowing in places that build your dreams, then you're not building your dreams. And I learned this at 19 years old. So being intentional. So I work with women who do my workshops and boot camps on looking at numbers of concrete, what is coming in and where is it flowing out? And let me tell you, it is confronting.
Yeah, that's a hard conversation to have when you look at that checkbook.
Yeah.
When you look at your bank statements, I'm telling you.
Now, I have some forms, and you want to be accountable, and you want to go to your bank statement and be honest with yourself about where your money is going. It's confronting because all we have to do is make different choices and being intentional about having the life of our dreams, about having freedom, about changing things for generation, but it's all a veil. It's just going and we're not seeing it. I say it's like a colander. Like you pour water in and little holes just coming out, and
Right.
you don't know where it went.
And you know what? And I think part of that is that, and if I'm not mistaken, Alicia, part of that is like we use this justification. Well, I just, I'm just treating myself. You know what I mean? Or this is really not a lot of dollars. And even when we have these conversations, I'm like, yeah, if you buy $10 here, $5, $15, $20, I mean, it adds up over the month, especially over the course of the year. And Mingli, Natasha, Serge, I know everybody got an Amazon problem. It's talking about like, I need to stop ordering from Amazon. We all need to stop ordering. Everybody got an Amazon problem.
So I have to say, there are some time-tested ways of mastering this where you set it up right and you don't have to worry about it. But we just don't know how to set it up right. I teach people how to set it up right. And then you got to be accountable. So if you're not, following your own script for having your life of your dreams, I had someone I was working with years ago, and she kept going to the store buying these $10 drinks because she liked the $10 health or some kind of drink. And, we looked at what that was doing to her budget. And one day she looked at that drink and she's like, this is my house. And it's real. Because I show folks with their credit cards debt, like line them up, look at how much interest you paid. You're going to own a home, like literally, of the money that you gave to credit card companies over a 10-year span or whatever year span. And so off of little things, all of those little things we buy is costing us the house we want to own, the dreams that we have. But again, we have to have the specialized knowledge, in my opinion, because they're time-tested ways to be masterful in this area. And if we don't,
Absolutely.
We don't know.
Absolutely. Alicia, we got a few moments left, but I want to get your take on where we stand today, because today is officially Black Women's Equal Pay Day, September 21st. BusinessInsider.com put it out there that it would take Black women working from the start of 2021 through today to earn as much as non-Hispanic white men made in just 2021. I'm going to put this out there for you. This is 2022, y'all. So it would take Black women working from the start of 2021, January 2021, through today, being September 2022, to earn as much as a non-Hispanic white man made in just 2021. Just let that marinate.
I like, it's been marinating for a long time. If the system is currently the way it's structured, it doesn't really serve us very well. And
Is this the system of capitalism, though, Alicia, or is this the system of pay? You know what I'm saying? Like because I feel like it's both.
The system of pay is just an extension of the kind of culture and dominant culture that we live in. That's all it is. It's an extension of that. We have to build our own. When we have resources, we have to be masterful at what we do with those resources so that we don't let the system victimize us. So we don't understand when we're out there being major consumers, we are victims. We're being victimized. We're working hard to make other people wealthy and to keep us doing it. And so let's get out of the mindset of being a consumer and being an owner.
So what do Black women do today in 2022, September 2022? What do the sisters do to really bring it to get some level of power, to feel like they're closing the gap, or to feel like, you know what, we're making progress?
I would say we have to up-level our skills. I'm doing a free workshop for women tonight on what you do right now in this what you do, and we up-level our skill. There's a world of, as the world is changing and we're entering this new fifth industrial revolution and paradigm, there are so many options and opportunities for us to up-level our skills and be major players in this industrial revolution. And a lot of it is in the tech world, but you don't have to just be tech to take advantage of this. You can be a great salesperson, but if you're doing it in the right areas, if you're doing it in the world of the blockchain and Web3 and those areas, and you're understanding the terminology, the language, the power, where things are going in the metaverse, all of those things, let's play in the areas that have the highest potential, usually we don't play in those areas. The job market there is booming. Like the average person is making there was a study about like one of the average salaries in this area is comparable to a Wall Street investment banker. But let's say you don't want to play that way. You can learn these skills. And like I said, you can build. People are building like, there's a young woman who started building land in the building out beautiful spaces in the metaverse and did 7 figures in 2021, you know, because she learned how to build. There's like I said, it's a whole new world of learning the blockchain and coding and what you can do there. You can build platforms where you creating exchanges and a whole different way of thinking about currency and challenge. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do right now. Let's not chase those old games that don't work for us. It just, you know, it's like beating your head against a wall. Let's create new opportunities for ourselves that do work for us. And let me tell you something, financial freedom, when you manage your money well, it gives you lots of options. And so getting straight about how you're managing, how resources flowing out of your life, getting in the net worth game, investing actually creates a lot of power for you and freedom.
There it is. There it is. We got a few moments left, but I want to, you talked about you got your seminar tonight. Talk to us a little bit about that this afternoon, Alicia. What can people expect from tonight's presentation?
Okay, so this is it's called Planting Seeds, like some of the things to think about and do right now. Get our money right, but also a huge portion of it, I'm going to talk about the future of work, where the economy is going, where the skill sets needed, the jobs needed, the ability to build. Some of the stuff that I'm talking about right now, I'm going to be a lot more specific. I'm going to talk about some places, some programs. A lot of stuff is free in this Web3 space. You know, there's courses, all kinds of courses and platforms where you can learn things for free. And completely and totally change the trajectory of your life. So let me say, my organization for empowering women, I'm the founder of Journey to Wealth, but I'm also the co-founder of an organization called the Disruptor DAO, and it's a decentralized autonomous organization that will live in Web3. And there we're talking about Fifth Industrial Revolution, disrupting all of this wealth gap stuff and giving women the options and opportunities to build in innovation and technology and shift the game. So, so I'll be talking about that tonight, the boot camp, what we can do right now. There's lots of options and lots of opportunities again to build like never before.
All right, folks, and make sure y'all check out the website is journeytowealth.net, journeytowealth, the number 2.net. Yes, ma'am.
So I recommend people go to my Instagram page, Journey to Wealth, Women in Action, and click on the flow code there. And also it's actually, my website is actually journey-to-wealth.com. I'm working on
.com. Okay.
It's a new web. So it's Journey.
Oh, it's a new one. All right. Okay. You're switching up on us. Okay. All right. Okay. I got you.
But I really recommend people, if you go to my Instagram, Journey to Wealth, Women in Action Instagram page, and go in my bio, there's a link there. And in that link, the boot camp, I have a boot camp coming up October 1st. It actually is the month of October. And this roadmap changes people's lives. It's for women, a boot camp for women. Everything that I teach, it changes women's lives. And I also, if you want to attend, it's for women, the free webinar tonight. It is, get on our mailing list before 6 p.m. and I'll send out a Zoom link with the, for attending tonight's session on planting seeds in this recession, what we need to do.
All right, absolutely. Sounds fantastic. Well, Alicia, we appreciate your time with us today. I truly, truly thank you for your expertise. And most importantly, thank you for giving us some light and for shifting a little bit of the paradigm around money. Folks, y'all hear Alicia Holmes, wealth building coach. She's doing it real big. Make sure y'all check out and take advantage of the opportunities and the resources there that she has for us. Alicia, thank you so much for coming on the show, but most importantly, thank you for being so good for the culture.
All right, you are welcome. Thank you. This has been
Absolutely
great. I love the work.
Absolutely.
This is great.
Absolutely. All right, folks. That is going to do it for us today. I am going to just hold off on this other story. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Trust and believe. We're going to get into it tomorrow. So tomorrow, make sure y'all tune in for that. But as always, make sure y'all support us at blackstarnetwork.com. Folks, look, you know the website, blackstarnetwork.com. This is the place where we're going to have conversations like this. This is conversations, nonstop conversations, where we're having to address issues, to talk about the things that are relevant, to talk about the cultural points. Again, you don't want to lose out on an institution that is bringing it like this. Again, blackstarnetwork.com, and make sure that you also check me out on all of my social media platforms. You can hit me up on The Real Farajii. You can hit me up on Twitter at Farajii, or on Facebook at Farajii Muhammad. I would love to connect with you, love to build with you, and love having those discussions even offline. So blackstarnetwork.com, follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and truly, truly appreciate it. Hey, big shout out to my online culture crew. Man, oh man, thank y'all so much. Y'all brought the fire today. So many new voices, so many new watchers. I appreciate y'all. Keep hitting that like button. Please subscribe and make sure that you share the content, because we are always putting out some great conversations. I want to thank all of my fantastic guests. I want to thank Dr. Gerald Horn. I want to thank Alicia today. I want to thank all of my guests today that were a part of it. Of course, we got Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams that checked in to talk to us about the FDA situation. A lot of great guests, and I thank each and every one of you. Stay tuned at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. His brother Roland with Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Peace.